This is my new bike, a 2024 KTM 450 EXC-F. And as their slogan says, it's ready to race. Whoa, tone that down a little. You see, stock bikes, even KTMs like this, aren't really ready to race. They're more ready to ride gently, so you don't break something. So let's change that. Let's make it ready to race, or ready to crash, one of the two. First changes I want to do is in the handlebar area. First, it's the handguards. I actually don't want to replace the stock ones. I want to keep the stock ones. Usually with stock levers and everything, it's really easy to break levers. There's a few things you can do. First of all, you have to change the levers and do a few tricks here and there so that you'll never break levers while running the stock guards. The idea of these levers is that they act as normal levers, but they also fold the other way. So if you take a crash, they're just gonna fold away and not break the tips. Also, it's important to be able to set them properly for your finger length. And these can easily be set up for these little screws down here. Just screw them in, screw them out, and then you can adjust the length of it. I like to have it a bit closer to the bars than most people. Good thing to do is to move the levers as far inside as you can, because that way it's harder for them to hit something and then ultimately break. Finally, after putting them a bit more inside the bars, I always like to use this. This is simple Teflon tape you can get at your local Home Depot or whatever. You basically wrap this around your handlebars, so you make your handlebars a bit slippery. What this will do is that when you're gonna put the pump onto the bars, it's gonna allow it to slip up and down. So if you crash, you're not gonna break the pump itself, it's just gonna slide up and down, and then you just pick up the bike, nudge it back up, and you're good to go. Allows you to run flag style guards without to worry. One thing to note about setting the levers up this way is when you tighten them, you have to tighten them a bit, move the bracket up and down, tighten them a bit more. Do this about 2 or 3 times. You don't have to tighten the screws too much, but also don't tighten them too little so that they're gonna rattle away while riding. So now with the Remex levers, they're able to fold out, they're able to be adjustable. With the Teflon tape, they're able to go up and down. So this way, even with flag style guards, you should never really break it. Now we're basically going to repeat the same process, but for the clutch lever. One thing to check from stock is make sure the cables and all the electrical wiring isn't attached to a brake pump, because if your brake pump moves, it's going to rip your cables apart. One common mistake is tying up your wires to the handlebar with a zip tie. The problem with that is if your brake pump does come over the bar, it's going to rip off the wires. Instead, you can use these rubber bands. It's going to be way harder for you to rip away the cables. The final part of the setup is how up or down the pump is. So ideally, in your regular riding position, the lever should be in line with your hand. If you're riding in the correct position, standing up, that's actually the same position, in line with your hands. It should be comfortable. You shouldn't have to stretch your hand like this or like that. It should feel good. The stock 2024 bikes come with a combo button for starting and stopping the bike. It's pretty stupid, it's really easy to break too. Looks cool, but that's kind of it. So my bike comes with separate switches for turning it on and turning it off. If this button rips out in the wild, it's really easy to tie 2 wires together. On the combo button, you have like 3 or 4 wires, and when it's muddy and everything, have fun finding which wire goes where. Next thing, something you won't need for Enduro, but you would need for rallying, is a bigger tank. This is a 12-liter Acerbis one. Stock one is like 9 liters. For European rallies, 12 is enough. 9 or whatever is not. If you're just doing Enduro and Enduro Cross, then yeah, scrap it. You don't need this. So if you're in there, you might as well cancel out the thermostat. You're gonna see why, but basically for better cooling, it's easier to just use a split Y pipe than the regular thermostat on these bikes. So this is the stock thermostat, and basically when the water is not hot enough, what it's gonna do is it's gonna block it from going into the radiators. It's going on a shorter loop. The problem is this also, even when it's open, it blocks a bit of the flow that you would normally get if you hadn't had one. So the solution is something like this, which is a T-shaped pipe that basically cancels out the thermostat completely. Yes, it's gonna take a bit longer to warm up. At the same time though, it's gonna provide a better flow. You can also see the original hose is thinner. but it also has only one insertion, while this hose has 3 insertion, even though it's a bit thicker. Full disclosure, this video was sponsored by Remex, which is a company that 2 of my good friends built. And when I say friends, I mean it. It's a company started by 2 really good buddies of mine, and they design and build the best aluminum protections for your latest KTMs, gases, and Husqvarnas. Both founders are avid riders and racers, and seeing their process, I really believe they make some of the best stuff out there. All their products are thoroughly tested both in the field and during the design process, like we did with their clutch cover here. We hit it with a hammer as hard as we could, as many times as we could, and it barely even scratched. You can find levers, radiator bars, different engine caps, and a bunch more of other different types of protections for your bike. Every part I used in this video is linked down below. Check them out at remexparts.com. All links will be down below in the description with an added 10% discount. A lot of these bikes, even the 4-strokes, come with no radiator fan. I get how some people could run without it. As someone who has fucked up a bike before because of overheating, I would not want to ride without a fan. So if your bike doesn't come with it, just put a fan on it. It's cheaper to install a fan than to change the piston, cylinder, valves, everything else in the engine. One thing I change on all my dirt bikes, be it hard enduro or rally enduro, is the stock radiator guards. The stock ones are plastic, and for plastic ones they're not bad, but they're pretty flimsy. I always like to put some aluminum ones, like these ones from Remex. These are way sturdier, they protect for impacts from the side, and they also protect way better from rocks, because they're, well, metal. One thing to know, if you have a 24 bike, a 2023 radiator guard will fit, but it won't fit properly. It will create basically a gap between the guard and the fairing of the motorcycle. And when you're gonna drop the bike on the side, you have a high risk of cracking the fairing on the bike. Next thing on the list that no KTM comes with from stock is a skid plate. There's multiple options you can go with. I've had one of those big metal ones in the past, and they just weigh a lot and don't really do much more than the plastic ones, so I just get a plastic one. For rallying, it's also important to be able to take it off pretty easily. You're gonna be doing a lot of oil changes and stuff, so having a skid plate that's easy to remove, like this one from Acerbis, should hopefully make your life a bit better. If you have a linkage bike, I would get on the linkage protector. In some parts, like the skid plate, having some blue Loctite can really help you keep the skid plate on the bike and not on the ground. One downside of this skid plate is that it's pretty minimalistic, and if you drop your bike on the side, you might really hit the side of the engine, and this is cast aluminum. And cast aluminum can pretty easily break if it hits something solid like a rock. So having a billet aluminum one to replace it is a pretty good idea. The cap is also aluminum. The plastic ones on KTMs do have a tendency to crack in high temperatures. Next thing that's especially helpful on 4-strokes is having one of this. This thing on 4-strokes gets extremely hot, and when it gets hot, it will burn through any pants that you can have. Not a pleasant situation, easier to just put this on. Another thing that you can change, it's not 100% essential, but it's good to have, is stock foot bags. While they're decent, they don't provide as much grip as some aftermarket ones, like this one. You can obviously get a ton of foot bags. Some are lowered, some are different positions. These ones, in my case, are standard, but since they have these little tiny screws things, they should hold your boot much better in place. One thing I always put on all my dirt bikes is a billet aluminum rear disc guard, like this one from Remex. This protects the disc. It's really easy to hit it with stones and rocks, whatever else, and easy to bend the rear disc. Judging by how the rear guard looks on my 2-stroke, I would say for me especially, it's a bit of a necessity, this one. So towards the rear of the bike, there's this thing here and this billet protection. This was more a problem on the 2023 bikes, where these brackets are basically pretty flimsy. On the 24, they're much sturdier. That being said, it's not bad to have an extra protection here in case you hit this part, because if you break the brackets from the swing arm, your swing arm is kind of Finally, wheels and tires. I'm not gonna tell you what tires to put on because it depends. Depends on the terrain, depends where you're riding, if it's muddy, sandy. I basically have always run mousses, so I'm gonna run mousses front and rear too. I'm gonna run rally mousses because at higher speeds, it's kind of the only mousse that will stay together and not just disintegrate. So I'm not gonna go into the full rally navigation setup, but one thing I will do is add this bracket from Hashimoto. Basically, this is more for the 2023 models. So it's not 100% compatible with 2024, but it should be easy to fit to a 2024. And with a few adjustments to the headlight, I should be able to DIY mount the headlight onto it. What this allows me to do is basically to have the road book on here while not having to reroute all the cables and go through all of that mess, while providing a super stable base since it does connect to the triple clamps up here and to the fender and the triple clamps down here. It's a bit better than the bar mounted system since this one has no chance of like falling. This is way easier to get on and off than Rally Tower. I had the Rally Tower on my 701. It's cool, but it's a bit of a pain to put on and off. And since I'm gonna be using this bike for Enduro Cross too, yeah, something like this. Let's just put it on here, leave it here. Small adaptations have to be made. The 2024 headlight doesn't have a way to mount on the Hasi bracket, so I'm drilling these holes, and zip ties are a man's best friend. So the headlight isn't exactly in the stock position, but it's really not far off and doesn't look too bad. But the whole point of this is that now I can put my rally things behind the fairings and here for special brackets. And I don't really have to take it off, right? Like all I have to take off when I go into Enduro Cross or just riding around is the big road book. But I still have access to my dashboard. Everything fits kind of nicely. This is gonna be the setup. You see, I used to think that a rally bike had to have a big tower on it to look proper. I still think big towers can look cool, but I also think that for me right now, they're just too much of a pain. I got to really appreciate simplicity. The less things on your bike, the less you have to worry about. I don't want to burden it with extra items, stupid protections that do nothing. I started to really appreciate minimalism when it comes to my race bike. In order to take this baby to a rally, all I have to do is mount the road book on the rail, drag a cable to the battery, and voila, that's it. And so here we are, my full rally and enduro setup. It's simple, clean, yet effective. And it suits the 450 quite well. But if you want to know more about the 450, check out our previous video where we go deeper into it. Also, again, a big thanks to this video sponsor, Ramex Parts, who have helped me immensely. Make sure to check them out via the links in the description below. Have a good one. Cheers.